Hello everyone, I'm Francesco. I'd like to take a very brief moment to introduce myself and share with you why I decided to make this film fridAy. I was brought up between England and Italy, and I was a very solitary child lost in a world of imagination inspired by predominantly films. And when I returned to the UK to pursue secondary level education, it was very quickly apparent that I had some strange traits in my behaviour, and at age 15 I was diagnosed with Aspergers syndrome. I was the only one in my family, amongst my peers, anyone I knew to be associated with that diagnosis, and therefore I didn't know what to make of it. I hid it, I avoided it, I stigmatized it, and that was the way it was for several years. I continued pursuing my interests in creative storytelling, became a filmmaker, and then only more recently, just very randomly, I came across a book and I noticed the author on the autism spectrum and being proud of it and using it to her advantage. And for the first time I realized, well, perhaps I'm not the only person with this diagnosis, and perhaps I might be one of the few people who really try to hide it and deny it. I am officially diagnosed with Asperger's, however I have undiagnosed OCD in a minor level, but it's definitely there, and misophonia, an intolerance to certain sounds, intolerance to the point of certain sounds really hurt me. So I decided to try and see if I could use my filmmaking skills and get in touch with people with similar conditions to me. Although this film is called fridAy and it lands on the topic of Autism Awareness Day, that is just scratching the iceberg tip, really. There's a lot more to it. And in fact, I really hope that you as an audience come out of it with maybe a bit more knowledge about autism and just get to know some more people who live around the world who experience this on a daily basis. It can be an effort and it can be a pleasure, it can be a mix. It varies by the person.
Ave Maria, gratia plena.
Temple Grandin. I'm professor of animal science at Colorado State University.
Hi, I'm Mitchell Daniels, local Toronto-based vocalist and historical interpreter.
My name is Caroline.
My name is Tal Anderson.
My name is August Lemire.
My name is Yasmin. I'm 18 years old and I live in London.
My name is Cameron Carr. I am 21 and I am classically autistic.
Hi, I'm Rhys Mooney. I'm 29 years old and I am an autistic individual from Cardiff, South Wales.
My name is Messiah Taule Allo, and I am an autistic filmmaker, animator, illustrator, and an editor and a photographer.
Hi, I'm Dominique Brown.
This is Susha, and I am filming for World Autism Awareness Month.
My name's Matthew Pickles. I'm from Canada. I live in Pickering, Ontario, Canada. And I'm 27 years old.
My name is Ignish Bharan. I'm from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. My grandparents are from India. I'm Malaysia.
My name's Jacob Lorenzo.
The MAG back, and today I'm making a video that for a very special day that I wanted to make for everyone to inspire, to connect and be able to self-promote awareness and acceptance for autism.
I was born with hydrocephalus and later diagnosed on the autism spectrum.
In early childhood, I was nonverbal. I was diagnosed in the UK. Don't let this accent fool you, I'm not American. I wasn't born in America, I wasn't even raised in America. I've been born and raised in the UK. I just picked up this accent from watching lots of movies and TV in early childhood, which built up my vocabulary a little bit too. And to make it more complicated, I'm also half Polish.
I do research on animal behavior. I have designed many livestock facilities, and they're used by major companies. I also have a lot of books. This is my book, Thinking in Pictures, my autobiography. It now has a new afterword, some of the new information.
So I was diagnosed originally with 2 different symptoms. So symptom 1 was autism when I was 6.5 at Peterborough in the UK, in Britain. And then dyslexia around the same time.
I am diagnosed with high-functioning Aspergers syndrome, and I was diagnosed when I was 7.
Asperger syndrome in a private clinic, 1997.
I have, and I was diagnosed at the age of 22 with Asperger syndrome through a GP, but given that I actually left school to start college back in 2003, and just before my 17th birthday, my mum actually recognised it prior to that, but the actual official diagnosis by GP, followed by various other medical professionals, wasn't actually diagnosed until around the age of 22, at which point I was 18 months away from graduating from university.
14. The United States of America.
I meet the criteria for the ICD-10 diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder, the higher functioning Asperger syndrome. My official diagnosis for my autism came around on the 9th of October back in 2013 when I was tested in Cardiff, South Wales.
I have high-functioning autism, ADHD, and obsessive tendencies. I was diagnosed at age 3 in Los Angeles, California.
The kind of autism I have is Asperger's syndrome. I got diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome in West Los Angeles in Southern California.
I was diagnosed with Aspergers when I was 4 years old, but I didn't find out until I was 15.
I was actually diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome.
Used to be known as Asperger's syndrome, but I don't remember when, but they stopped diagnosing that as that and just switched to calling it autism.
My diagnosis was confirmed in 2007 in the city of Melbourne in Australia.
I was diagnosed with high-functioning autism, and that diagnosis has since been updated to Asperger's syndrome. However, recently, experts have gotten rid of the individual diagnoses for autism and have just recently started referring to it as simply autism spectrum disorder. The term Aspergers, Dr. Hans Asperger, there's been a lot of talk recently that he was affiliated with the Nazi Party. But as far as autism, it was great because he was able to finally put a name to a portion of the spectrum that was a little bit different than high-functioning autism or low-functioning autism or Rett syndrome. And as a result, he was able to help more people get the proper care that they need.
I was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. And basically when I was a baby, I couldn't talk. I stopped communicating.
Well, I first found out in grade 8 in elementary school that I was diagnosed with Asperger's. My mom gave my teacher permission to share it with the class. And then everyone kind of, from that moment on, everyone understood, so that explains it kind of thing, and they all kind of understood more. They kind of wanted to, they kind of asked me about it a bit, to kind of understand how my behavior, how Asperger's affects my behavior or affects me in whatever way. So it was pretty, at first when my teacher first explained it, I was kind of embarrassed, but then at the same time I was happy that she explained it to the class, because it allows everyone to understand so they don't make fun of me or, look at him, he's crazy. But no, they actually understood it more, and they were kind of interested. It sounded interesting to them. So it allowed me to pretty much bond more with the class.
That time when I was born, I was like normal, and then later I realized that I couldn't speak until 3 years old.
It was an official diagnosis. She's just a regular teacher, but she pretty much she warmed up to me, kind of thing, if you know what I mean. She took care of me a lot, specifically because she could tell that I was autistic, but it wasn't really, how do we say it? It wasn't really common then.
I wouldn't necessarily act appropriately in all settings. And as a result, one of the things that I would often do is I would just randomly blurt out songs. It could be the middle of July and I would just randomly blurt out Frosty the Snowman, albeit extremely off key and extremely loud and obnoxious. But this is unfortunately a very, very common characteristic of someone on the spectrum, is not necessarily acting appropriate in all situations.
Autism is a special part of some people around the world. It's also kind of learning difference. It can also affect the way people live their everyday lives. Instead of puzzle pieces, I think of autism as a rainbow or a colorful pinwheel.
Well, I was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. I was 4 years old in 2002, which is the initial diagnosis, and the official diagnosis I got was in 2006, and it was in Australia.
When I was very, very young, my parents realized that I was extremely developmentally delayed. I had no speech until about the age of about 3.5 or so. And I had severe behavioral issues. I wasn't necessarily always sitting up straight. I wasn't acting my age. And often another big thing that really sort of stood out was that I wouldn't always go and play with the other kids whenever we'd go to a play group or a social skills group. I would always sort of want to go off and sort of play separately from the rest of the other children. And so that was sort of a big red flag.
I think the best way to describe autism, I believe, is that it's a gift. It's a source of wisdom, and it's also a source of creativity. I find that I get a lot of the creative parts of my personality from my autism. However, it also has its flaws, but I guess those are just part of the package.
Autism is a true continuous trait. One that's a little bit socially awkward and geeky get to be autism. It's not like a COVID diagnosis where they can genome test it and tell you exactly which strain they have. That's not how it works. It's, I've been out to Silicon Valley. A lot of the programmers out there are mildly on the autism spectrum. Engineers and drafting people and welding people, machinery designers that had 20 patents and things out in the field. And I'm going to estimate that about 20% of those were either autistic, dyslexic, or ADHD. And I am saying that absolutely seriously.
It's different for everybody. For me, autism is part of you. It's a neurological disorder, so it's your brain. The way I think, what I do, how I see the world differently, that's all me. If there was a cure for autism, that would be the equivalent of me not existing anymore, because it's one of the same. There cannot be a Cameron without autism.
I guess the best ways of autism trying to, or should I say, then I was re-diagnosed before I went to university, and they put me, I think I rated like a 7 on the scale, which put me at the high-end functioning autism or Aspergers.
Autism was first discovered by Dr. Leo Kanner and Dr. Hans Asperger, who ran separate but similar studies, and autism itself was originally considered to be a form of schizophrenia. Now, autism in general has had a bit of a dark history to it. in the early days, there was a large lack of understanding as to really what autism is, and particularly in the cases of lower functioning autism, many children ended up being locked up in mental institutions, and it was largely blamed on bad parenting. Today, of course, we know this is not the case. It's essentially caused from a mutation in the brain. And I like to describe autism as sort of this short circuiting of the brain. So if we think of autism as an electrical panel, everything needs to be wired just right in order for the electronic to work properly. However, in the case of the autistic brain, it's not necessarily wired entirely properly. And so as a result, you have some areas of the brain which are extremely strong, and that's where you get the development of the specialized interests. So for example, with me, some of my specialized interests are the railway, music, and history. But then I'm absolutely terrible in math, so there's that bit of short-circuiting there.
The way I like to explain it is a brain can be more thinking and cognitive or thinking, or it can be more social emotional. And there's a certain point where that's just personality variation. Now, if you would take half the population will be more on the social emotional. The other half of the population is going to get more on the less socially emotional and more on the thinking side. So that half would have varying degrees of autistic traits, and it's extremely variable.
To me, autism is actually is like having a different perception of the world, how you think, how you feel, how you see things, and how you feel right here. That's how I describe autism.
The very first book I ever did was called Emergence, Labeled Autistic. Emergence is really a good title because I can always keep learning more and more. Now, right now, I'm really interested in these different kinds of thinking, and I've discussed that in my Autistic Brain book. And there's science that shows that the object visualizer like me, who can't do algebra, and I'm very concerned that algebra is keeping kids out of skilled trades, which is just ridiculous. And there's the mathematical visual spatial mind, and then the word thinker. This is something I'm really interested in right now because we need the skills. Now, there was one thing where I had a turning point in not so much emotionally, but in thinking, was if I ask you, think about some building in downtown Toronto, you would see it. You've got that big tower with a restaurant on the top. You would see that. But there's some people that are such a verbal thinker that if I say to them, think about a church steeple, I'll start naming them off. Where are they located? Visual thinkers always name them off. But I asked a speech therapist, maybe this is why she became a speech therapist, highly verbal. All she saw was this, a very vague, pointy thing. Well, you see, that's like extreme verbal thinking. And I'm going, wow, that's really different.
Although it is widely known to be on a spectrum, what seems to be the common neurobiological aspects of it is mostly noted in the brain from various professors who state that the corpus callosum, the bit that connects the center of the brain with the left and right hemisphere, it's the center of the brain that connects the hemispheres, is smaller in people with autism than neurotypical people, and the prefrontal cortex is 60% more neurons for pattern finding.
Put it in a constant test where you've been given, where oneself has been given a handicap, and it's a constant struggle with how oneself can actually adapt to the environment they're in.
You get more severe autism, then they become nonverbal. Then you can get epilepsy on top of it. Then you can get other medical problems on top of it too. But it's part of variation. But the problem that you've got is maybe the milder, slightly socially awkward geeky. They're running Silicon Valley companies. And then you've got very severe that can't dress themselves. And then some of the nonverbals can type independently, and they describe problems with controlling movement, problems with extreme effort is required to screen out background noise. They've got to rest because they get overstimulated. You see, you've got this gigantic variation. And there's a tendency for educators to lump them all together. And I'm seeing in the whole disability movement, all the disabilities together. So you have blind people, deaf people, people using a wheelchair, all together. And they have very different needs.
I would describe autism as a way of life. It's an awesome condition and an awesome way of living.
Being in a garden where every flower is unique, just like every person is unique that has autism and their other special needs, or just people are unique and all different in general.
A different way of thinking, learning, and processing information, slightly different and centric to the norm, depending on as to what the individual person defines as being normality when it comes to humanity.
A neurological disorder which causes our brains to work differently?
The question I'm always getting asked is autism increasing? Now they've changed the guidelines so that the Aspergers, which is basically autistic traits, socially awkward with no speech delay. You see, in the past, to be labeled autistic, you had to have speech delay. I had obvious speech delay. I was pretty much nonverbal up to 3.5, maybe, and still having problems with speech by age 4. So that wouldn't be Asperger's, but you see that Asperger's is just the variant where there's no speech delay. You see, and then in the latest guideline, they put all the autisms together. Now, this is where early intervention is important. So you do your early intervention, some kids are going to remain nonverbal, others don't. We wouldn't have the technology that we're talking on right now if you didn't have autism traits. Because the social people don't want to sit at computers and design this stuff.
Slow learner. They are good in remembering things. Numbers, visual, dates.
But this is the problem you've got with autism. It's such a huge spectrum.
I'd say it affects me in the worst way, in the form of what's known as meltdowns. So the feeling of being overwhelmed constantly, and that's quite difficult when I'm trying to use public transport, and especially living in a city like London, it can sometimes bring about quite a few sensory issues.
Problems with extreme sound sensitivity. Sensory problems are real, again, extremely variable, from a mild nuisance to being very debilitating. There's a whole range of sensory problems.
Being in a tunnel where no matter how loud you're talking to the other person, the communication just isn't coming through.
There's another kind of thinker. It's the visual spatial. This is your mathematical mind. This is the kid that when he's 7 years old, he might be a genius in math. I was good at art at that time. And I've seen situations where parents have gotten so locked into the autism label, they don't think to teach their kid who's good at math programming, even though both parents are programmers. One of the advantages you have with computer stuff is that, children can do it. It isn't like taking them in a factory, that's too dangerous. But learning how to do JavaScript or Python on one of the programs, the young kids can learn the grown-up stuff. Video games use JavaScript, and that the touch screens on the SpaceX capsule use JavaScript. I said, COVID's not going to stop you from learning JavaScript. Okay, if you like a book, you can go into the bookstore and buy the book really cheaply. There's all kinds of free stuff online. Why don't you learn JavaScript? COVID's not an excuse for that. That's something you can do even if you're in the strictest quarantine.
Getting fired from my job. library worker. I think maybe because of the management of the company. The company's management are not that good. It has led to a lot of trouble.
When I was younger, I had horrible problems with anxiety, absolutely terrible problems with it. And I've been talking to several people about, autistic burnout. And I think these are people that have extreme anxiety. And I can really relate to that. And the only reason I don't have extreme anxiety right now is I've been on antidepressants for the last 40 years. And I discuss it here in Thinking in Pictures. And my health was absolutely coming apart in my early 30s. And I'd read an article about antidepressant medication for anxiety, and I kind of resisted the idea of taking medication, but I don't think I would have been able to do the things I did if I hadn't taken it. Very low dose. And then and going off of it can be a huge disaster, I can tell you that right now. Heart pounding for just nothing. And then I found out my fear center was 3 times larger than normal. It was on overdrive. My nervous system was looking for dangerous jungle animals out there, but they weren't there. But that's the way my nervous system reacted.
Sometimes find it difficult to focus on things that I'm not really entirely interested in. So when it comes to very specific information or very specific, especially ways of learning, I just kind of brick wall and don't really absorb any information.
I've had a lot of challenges, particularly in my early days when it comes to my autism diagnosis. One of the biggest aspects for me was a great difficulty in making friends. When I was younger, a lot of people thought that my autism was contagious, this sort of infectious disease that if they came too close to me, that they might catch my autism. We know for a fact that it is not contagious. Occasionally, it can be hereditary. Going through school, I had to constantly fight along with my parents in order for me to get the proper supports for me to be successful within the school system. And eventually, I was put into the special education program. And that's proven to be both a blessing and a curse for me. At the time, it certainly was what I needed. Yes, I could graduate with a diploma, but I would have to do grade 13 in order to get the necessary credits in order to graduate with the same skill level. So that's probably some of the biggest challenges that I've had.
I was bullied a lot before this was found out or diagnosed. I'm not going to mention her name, but she pretty much did frame me, saying that I said something that I did not say, and then I pretty much got suspended and had to spend a week in a psycho ward, which wasn't the best experience at all. But ever since then, I've been more careful in choosing who my friends are and who I talk to.
Autism can be hard. I have a lot of challenges with math, and sometimes my emotions get out of control.
I struggle with normal human things as well as specific things related to my autism, like sensory overload, auditory processing issues, and eye contact challenges.
Loud noises are more pronounced. Smells, they are quite intense. The sensation of touch as well, being touched, I'm not a fan of that, especially when it's unexpected. I'm a little bit of a perfectionist as well, which I guess kind of goes well with being an animator, but sometimes I can be in a low mood or whatever, but I'm learning.
The emotion which I give off when I'm saying something, and when I'm unable to register anything as a joke or what's the other one I'm looking for? And my speech pattern, as you just plainly saw right there, when I'm struggling to say something in a sentence.
The worst thing about my autism is that I get overwhelmed at things that involve change or when something's go wrong. If there is a huge change in my scheduling, I often have to work so hard to adjust to it.
Well, to me, I think differently. I perceive things, sometimes I may not understand people, and sometimes I may confuse things, and so this can actually affect me, because I may not understand people in some other ways. In some ways I can, but in some ways I can't.
Like, I had a hard life growing up, I'm not gonna lie, because I had hard times making friends, and people didn't understand me that well, like teachers, adults, and and just kids in general. They just never understood like what was going on with me, because, well, I was autistic and nonverbal. Yet I had hard times with my family, and it took time for my family to understand more about autism and how to work with me, and how to be able to be like teaching me all these things that I had to learn, and it was tough at the time. And when I was in public schools, like, people were bullies, and honestly, I didn't know how to process it.
Mind becomes shaky if someone tell me that they are going to call the cop because I did something wrong.
I guess growing up trying to learn social cues and wouldn't make eye contact as much.
Social cues, primarily with emotions. I understand basic emotions like happy, sad, angry, so on and so forth, but it's more of the more subdued emotions like depression or neutrality or various things along that sort that are more subtle emotions, and then also with sarcasm as well.
I mean, all through first half of my career, I never disclosed. Now I disclose things I need, and I'm now finding out that's called self-advocacy. Like, I get confused with a lot of computer stuff, so I just say to people, I want cell phone numbers. And I want a cell phone number that if I can't log on, you'll pick it up when I call. Okay, maybe that's an accommodation. Another thing is I can't remember long strings of verbal information. So I would just say, let me write it down. The order of how to unjam a copy or whatever it was.
Autism makes me feel like I'm on the outside looking in, and that really can get really sad. But just always remember that the more you look in, eventually the more it's gonna shine out.
There's nothing bad. To me, I don't think there's anything bad. It's mostly positive. Like I said before, to me, it's more of a gift, special gift, that makes you not special, but it makes you stand out in a good way.
I'm getting very concerned that a lot of these kids today, they're not getting a chance to get into computer programming or get into a skilled trade. I mean, one of the worst things the schools have done is taken out all the hands-on classes. Worst thing that they've did. Because if you don't try welding or you try some other thing, you're not going to know whether you like it unless you try it. There's people on the spectrum that are in theater. Well, if the school doesn't have a school play, they don't get a chance to try that out. Building things, that was my interest. Autism was always secondary. But I'm seeing a lot of kids today where autism totally defines them. Any kind of a service, like a little tutoring or a little special ed, you have to have a label. And if you don't have a label, insurance is not going to pay for the tutoring or whatever it is that you might need. And so that makes it more people getting the label.
I should mention that there is no cure for autism. However, there is treatments available, which are non-medicated, all therapeutic treatments, and corrective therapies available that definitely do help and have been proven to help minimize the various different symptoms of autism.
It has been known to affect my social life when it comes to people failing to comprehend my way of thinking, understanding communication barriers, and also, well, especially when it comes to employment, that has been my biggest barrier and challenge yet, to be honest with you. Hell on legs over the past 10 years, to be honest with you. People failing to comprehend how people like me think and how we manage tasks and the way that we process information and basically do things.
One of the biggest issues for me is trying to find work, because there's been this weird stigma going around that many employers have started to believe, where people on the autism spectrum aren't necessarily as capable of doing certain tasks. And yes, that is true to a certain extent. Science has actually proven that having someone with a disability on your staff is actually extremely beneficial. One really interesting aspect with anyone on the spectrum is this idea of their specialized interests.
I can say, find something you can be good at. I don't care if it's music, programming, whatever it is. Okay, you have somebody that doesn't, has maybe more challenges. There still might be something that they'd be good at. There was a guy in an institution that was nonverbal, and a doctor took him out and taught him how to make coffee at the local gas station. They love him. He made beautiful coffee. Okay, that's something that you could be good at. Or you have a verbal kind of autistic person and they're working in an auto parts store and they love him because he memorized every part and doesn't need the computer.
If there's someone that's really into technology and programming, well, then maybe give them a database job to do. So it's all about tapping into that person's specialized interest. And if you do that, then I'm sure you will definitely find it to be a very rewarding opportunity.
With me, I'm pretty gifted in trains. Like, I know a lot about trains. Another one is computers. I'm really, let's just say, really good at programming.
One of my special interests is music and performing. And through that, I've done a lot of work in the autism communities, and through that, have had the great opportunity to meet some amazing people and to work alongside many very, very prestigious, both politicians and celebrities as well. I primarily do a lot of corporate events, government events, galas and conferences. And for my work, I ended up receiving the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal, which is typically a medal normally given to military personnel or politicians. But when I received it, I was actually the youngest person to have received it. So that was a real honor. So I would definitely say that my autism has definitely been a true benefit for me. And in return, I try to do interviews like this where I try and raise awareness of really what autism is and really try and stress the benefits of someone on the spectrum. And even that has been really, really, really rewarding. I've been in a number of different documentaries discussing it.
I like the logical way that I think. And one of the ways I've been dealing with COVID, I'm now fully vaccinated. I've got the 2 weeks after the second shot, and I'm going to go on a trip next week. It'll be my first flight in a year.
Autism makes me feel more powerful. People say my greatest superpower is my ability to interact well with people and be empathetic. It also gives me great comedic timing and a good sense of humor. I'm also good at art and the performing arts.
Autism is me. I am very adaptable in terms of situations or improvising or trying something new and different, which is not very common with autistic people, especially not the classically autistic people, but go figure. I'm very creative. I seem to never run out of ideas. I think that kind of stems back to my childhood, being able to communicate through drawing, and not only did the skill develop, but also my creativity and imagination to be able to think in pictures, basically.
My selective memory, in which whenever I need to remember certain facts about something, I am able to remember it off the top of my head, like that. And that whenever I am given a set of instructions to do something, I read them over once, and then I get on and do it, and I'm able to complete it without issue. And if I do have an issue, I just go back to someone and ask for their help or whatever. Is there anything specific they want me to do with it?
The best thing about my autism is that it helps me to focus on anything that I'm interested in. I often commit to my favourite work that I like doing, and I can be very organised when I do my work. Or I can be very organised when I do anything, really.
It actually expands my imagination and how I have a very good different point of view in the world. So I would think that autism gives you a better output on the world. So that's what I actually described.
A special skill that I think I have is I am able to learn some world music drum beats, and I get inspired by a lot of Eurovision artists.
Okay, the good thing here is I can honestly say I consider myself to be OCD in that respect, as regards being very organised and punctual on both a personal and professional capacity. I take great care and detail in everything that I do, and if something isn't quite right, if I lose 3 hours of sleep, then so be it, until I achieve my target.
So, dealing with what I am, what I know about myself, should I say, in that regard, helps me to see my strong and weak points. Finding patterns, relating it to hyper-focus on certain things that I like most.
You know, autism has helped me and my acting career go right on path. I'm a recurring actor on the Netflix show Atypical. I've also appeared on 911, and I'm in a movie called Please Stand By.
Things I really am interested in, I absorb like sponge, I guess. I don't... Really absorbent sponge.
When I used to live in Oshawa, Ontario, I would bring my stuff to this awesome arena, or shall we say community center, in Whitby, called Iroquois. It's a very lovely place, so if anyone hears this, it's actually, in Canada, it's the biggest acre-wise owned property. It's the biggest property owned. It is a fun place to come hang out. That is after COVID. But anyways, I would go there, take my stuff, and then what would happen is there'd be teams playing sports and stuff, and there'd be siblings. And if they didn't want to watch, they were bored of watching their sibling play, let's say hockey or lacrosse or whatever the case may be, they'd come to me. And I would entertain them with the games, with some video games, movies, stuff like that. And there have been one or two instances where a few kids were having a temper tantrum because they weren't getting their way. I would say, "Here, come here, guys. I'll cheer you up." And at 1 or 2 points, the parents said, "Thank you," and then I would say, "No problem." So yeah, like that's one thing that I love about myself is I'm going to say, contribute to the community, and the best part is I love doing it for nothing, because it's fun for me. And another good attribute to my autism is, like I said, movie lines, drama. And when I say drama, I mean like theater, musical theater, drama, stuff like that. And the third thing is my interests, trains, computers, stuff like that.
Creativity. I found that I am really quite creative because of my difference. And I think being able to stand out in such a large community of young people my age is quite extraordinary. Something I never thought I would have as a young child.
I'm a big fan of NASA and space, so I was reading about how the astronauts tolerate being all together in the space station crammed in. And one of the things they do is they have a schedule. You get up in the morning, it's time for your work, your midday meal, your exercise, your fun. And all during COVID, I've gotten up, I have breakfast, and then showered and dressed for work by 7:30 every single day. And the few days I did not do it, I felt really horrible. And I think that helped me. And I suggested to kids, well, look up the space station. NASA wakes them up in the morning. They can choose the music that they get from mission control to get woken up.
What makes a better world? 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 If we believe that autism is one of the most incredible things in the world, hopefully we can have a better world and have peace and love. Don't you agree?
I really began to develop a much better ear for my singing, and my voice gradually began to develop. And my first real official performance was at my school's talent show when I was in about, it was either grade 1 or grade 2. And I ended up performing Come Clean by Hilary Duff. I took a pretty long break from singing for a number of years. Frankly, I couldn't have cared less about it. And then in 2004, my grandmother was diagnosed with a glioblastoma brain tumor, and unfortunately passed away on Christmas Eve of 2004. Stricken with this, I decided that I wanted to try and do something to ensure that another family would not have to go through what we ended up having to go through. So a decision was made that we would collaborate and create a Christmas single called The Greatest Gift. It was a 7-minute single, and once it was done, once the recording was done, we ended up releasing it for Christmas of 2007. And I ended up distributing it at all my different performances. And all the money went to the Canadian Cancer Society. So I was really, really proud of that. We did quite well. We ended up raising over $200 just completely organically without doing any advertising.
Another special skill I feel that I have is public speaking, and also being able to observe and pick up a lot of information using my auditory senses. So I think that is really amazing.
I would definitely say that autism in many cases can absolutely be a superpower.
And I thought my jokes were bad. You want to start taking things a little more seriously. You want to know how I got these scars? Why so serious? Let's put a smile on that face.
There's a lot of kids that get labeled as weird, and I was labeled as weird in Arizona.
Work on my sim, do more creative stuff, and practice my drama skills.
I've been performing as a vocalist since about the age of 6. And through that, I've had the great opportunity and privilege to work with a number of other people on the spectrum and who have had a variety of different disabilities as well.
Et benedictus fructus ventris, ventris tui, Jesus. Ave Maria.
I have many obsessions. I love researching nutrition. I've found so many natural resources and natural ways of looking at autism and special needs as a whole, and natural ways of helping it, that I think that's been a really big eye-opener for me, and I could just spend days and weeks just reading books about nutrition.
fountain pens and currencies. Collect them, then I touch them, and I use them. Yeah, because I want to see my handwriting. Because my handwriting is nice. Because the ink is smooth writing, free flowing.
If I hadn't had the good writing skills I had, I wouldn't have been writing for that magazine. And I went up and I got the editor's card. I saw that door, but then I produced a decent article.
My notebook was something maybe more like a diary. Something like what happened over the days. Recount. Sometimes private, sometimes shared.
When a kid gets out of high school, they ought to have some decent writing skills. I knew how to write a business letter. In 6th grade, I was taught that.
I'm also good in currencies. I collect currencies. Indonesia is rupiah.
I'm just like everyone else. I am obsessed with making TikToks.
In early childhood, I was nonverbal. The only way I could communicate was through drawing. Naturally, that led me to study animation at the university level. I'm currently in my 3rd year at a BA. I plan to do my first artist in residence this year at the Jane Austen Museum, so that's quite cool.
I really enjoy learning about history and things in that kind of sociology subgenre, if you want to call it that, like so history and governments and economics and politics and things like that.
My obsession, if we should call it that, is animation, art. I always go to art galleries whenever I go on a trip, be it abroad or locally. Art galleries are something where I get lost in, where I feel comfortable, where I can get some really good inspiration or a little bit of knowledge about the art world, and I recommend that anyone goes to art galleries if they can.
My worst obsession that I have, thanks to my autism, is that I always have to make sure that I get everything done in a structure, and then everything has to be planned out accordingly. And that if anything gets changed at the very last second, it well and truly annoys me, and I am unable to adapt very quickly. And I always get annoyed with the person who changes the plans within a very short time frame. However, if it's changed well and truly beforehand, then I am all right with it.
Obsession with timekeeping, time management, yes. And also, since moving away from my parents, having the independence to actually eat a healthy and organic diet. So for me, I would say plenty of fresh fish, greens, followed by calamari, Greek olive oil every day of the week.
A special skill that I picked up didn't come around until my tenure at university. That was during my games enterprise courses. As a side hobby that I picked up was video editing, that I managed to progressively improve along the tenure and up to this present day. As an example of my videos that I've created, I have also created a YouTube channel as well to commemorate, to show off my skills, my video editing skills, whenever I've decided to go around creating videos. And at the moment, the only videos I have are me playing video games.
I like video games, and I also like fan fiction. Those are my obsessions. So I would actually think those two are actually kind of my best exceptions. I'm an actor and voiceover artist, so I'll give you a good let's see what character I can do.
Audrey, let me explain. Something has happened to me. What? I thought it was semi-serious. You can't move to Boston. I'll never see Max.
I'll do Bugs Bunny. What's up, Doc?
Where are you? When you get there, just stay there. I'm coming over. We have to talk. I'll be right there.
Sylvester the cat. Sutherland Socrates!
I'm an inconsiderate prick!
Ah! More of emotion? Where's the kaboom? There is supposed to be an earthly kaboom.
I spent about to go there, man. Stop sign on my shitty Chevy. I spent some more, failed to yield on a crosswalk. I changed lanes in a second, and I changed lanes without signaling about running a red light and speeding.
So, and Speedy Gonzalez. Yeehaw! Yeehaw!
No. I haven't paid parking tickets. Be gentle.
Wait, where's going to call these notes? And so that's how I think of it, you know.
I would really like to share with you a extract of one of my poems that I wrote when I was 12 from my book titled The Way I See the World. It's available on Amazon if you're interested to have a look at it. And the poem is titled Believe in Yourself. Don't let things hurt your feelings. It's no use when you're not believing. When people hurt you, let them try, but don't cry. When you're stuck with something hard, don't let it feel like lard. So always believe in yourself and always think, I am myself.
My biggest obsession is pets and pet care. I love anything to do with animals, whether they come from the ocean or they come from a farm or if they come from the sea. I love it.
Yes, well, since I graduated uni, my obsessions would be mostly my visual effects and my Japanese, and I correlate between the two of them, and so my visual effects branches out into different sections. So, for instance, so I'll give you a sneak peek. So I made a skeleton human skeleton, and then adapt it for my 3D creatures, and then also the bio part. It's the brain, the phonics. There's the phonics, the hippocampus, thalamus, and amygdala, which I learnt to draw and then design in 3D, like you see here. So yeah, hippocampus is mostly for memory, and then translate that into Japanese. Kaiba. Hippocampus is Kaiba, and then thalamus is Intotai, what I can recall. So I have many topics that join together. So I place them into a 3D skin of a creature I made, and then I can rig it later for an animation to make it look more realistic.
I met a lot more obsessions, before I started taking the medication. That calmed down a lot of the obsessions. And I had to learn that people didn't want to talk about the same stuff over and over again. I can remember boring the kids in high school, going on and on about the carnival rides over and over again, to the point where that got boring. Of course, I liked the centrifugal force from this ride called the rotor. And I had a lot of problems with getting bullied in high school. And the only places I was not bullied was the shared interests. Can't say enough importance of getting kids into shared interest groups.
Social skills are so vital, and if you're hoping that your child will make improvements in order to help minimize the symptom.
Definitely a support network. Absolutely having the necessary support of people who care about them.
I have a few friends here and there. They show me things which I like.
One of the things that's really helped me a great deal is my autism service dog, Simba. Now, Simba, he's a 10-year-old golden retriever, and he primarily acts as a companion dog and primarily helps me with my self-esteem and my confidence and anxiety. So he's just been such an amazing asset to both me and my family.
being able to do study and be who I am. You see, there are not many people with autism that can't go through like that. But I just want to show that if you put your effort into it, you can actually be the best in what you can be, and actually achieve greatness in your future without anyone saying you can't do this and you can't do that.
Nailing an interview, and then nailing the internship itself. That only happened like last month, and that was huge for me. Last month, as of recording on the 2nd of April, 10:13 a.m.
Fitness in the park, trying up foods.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of my YouTube channel, Fitness Adventures. The second exercise I'm going to do now is bar. Okay, now I'm going to hang myself on the bar for 10 times. Okay, ready, set, go!
For example, with me, some of my specialized interests are the railway and history.
My favorite shows and my favorite movies I love to watch would be Disney movies, would be DreamWorks movies, and most of all, my favorite was Thomas the Tank Engine, because that blue number one train, I guess he inspired me to believe that anyone can do anything, and like, you know how in the show they say you have to become very useful and be, you know, like, prove to the boss that you're a useful engine.
One of my favorite obsessions are trains.
I do a lot of train spotting. I like diesels, and if I saw a steam train, oh boy. Ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. I guess if I was to do something to celebrate, I'd probably showcase what I've done on my route, on this layout I've been making on a train sim. So it's pretty much the local subway system that I live near. So I'll be showcasing that, all the creativity and knowledge I put into it. This is on a game. I will broadcast, I usually broadcast to Facebook.
When I was younger, I won a storytelling competition and poetry competition. When I was 11 years old, 12 years old. It was more oral.
It proved to me that I wasn't, like, absolutely incapable of doing certain things. It proved to me that I can still, what's the word, like, participate in society? I mean, I don't want to say it like that, but kind of proved to me that I can still have, like, a give or take normal life.
So back in 2010, graduating from university. Then, of course, 6 years ago, 5-6 years ago, I moved to Greece as a way of basically an opportunity of developing my career and employment opportunities. So basically life experience, but abroad in a foreign country. But luckily, see, I had my grandma there, so I was far from being alone, to be honest with you. And then, of course, university graduation, and now, of course, building my own business and living independently as a human.
Graduating high school in June.
I've had so many great opportunities, both large and small. and many of them have been music related. However, I think probably one of my proudest achievements, on top of having received the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal, was actually my success in school. All throughout my school career, though I had phenomenal teachers and I had phenomenal classmates, I was told over and over and over again that, oh no, he'll never graduate high school. Oh no, he'll never graduate college. Heck, he'll never even go to college. Well, fast forward 6 years, and now here we are. I've graduated high school with honors with distinction, and ended up receiving the Lieutenant Governor's Volunteer Pin. And then I ended up graduating college on. I just finished a program called Music Business Management. It was an advanced diploma, and I ended up receiving and being on the Dean's Honor Roll there. And right now I'm just finishing up my last few weeks of my post-grad in Museum and Cultural Management, and I'm going to be receiving the Dean's Honor Award as well for Centennial College as well. So I've been very, very fortunate in that sense. It definitely hasn't been easy. I did have accommodations going throughout school, but overall, it's just been such an extraordinary experience, and it's been really, really cool to sort of really beat the odds, so to say, or so to speak.
Always wanted to have my own place, and you got to start somewhere, right? You can start in an apartment, basement apartment. I got lucky and found this lovely apartment that's near the lake where I live. So it's an amazing experience, but it depends on your point of view. It can be lonely, it can be fun, it can be amazing, it also makes you feel good knowing that you did this. You managed to do this. In regards to being by yourself, if you can manage, there's always always possibilities and miracles waiting on their horizon.
I think my greatest achievement, actually, would be having autism. I never thought that I would be able to study for a degree. I never thought I would even be accepted into university because I've got no formal entry requirements. But I stood by my difference, and I said to myself that I really want to have a degree. I really want to study in university. So let me try. And I guess I didn't give up, and I got my dreams answered. I have now been accepted into university and will be starting my degree in September this year. And I think that is a massive achievement for me. I'm going to be studying early childhood studies first because I love working with children. And then hopefully I'm going to go on to study naturopathy and nutrition.
Couldn't be happier. When you move into your own place, it shows that you do stuff yourself, you're independent. You know what I mean? For me, it's a achievement. That's all I can say.
My greatest achievement in life is the present. I can't say that, back 10 months ago or 5 years ago or whatever, that was my greatest peak. I've yet to peak. I keep developing as an artist. I keep growing as a person.
Completing my level 3 extended national diploma in IT in college, and then going on to completing both my bachelor's arts degree in games enterprise at the University of South Wales, and of course my master's course in games enterprise alongside that.
I consider my greatest achievement to be today.
In my own way, to live my life, trying to make meaning in mere being, which is a good quote. If you know who quoted that, congratulations. It's a psychological quote. And since we are very pattern oriented, and I find things that correlate.
Not being shy. Being myself in public, showing people that, and everyone, to encourage them, if you want to do something or be who you want to be, do it. Don't be embarrassed, don't be shy. Just overcome that and just show yourself, be yourself. I implore everyone out there, if you're struggling with that, like being shy, you're like embarrassed to show who you are, don't be who you want to be. Be yourself.
I made myself good at a skill other people want. And I would sell myself by showing off drawings, pictures of jobs. And I was really motivated to, prove that I could do things. I was not stupid.
Being praised and credited for developing my personal skills that I'm really good at. I also believe that using your interests and skills in achieving successful outcomes is also a great achievement.
The thing I did that probably helped welfare the most, animal welfare the most, was a very simple scoring system I developed for evaluating meatpacking plants. 5 simple outcome measures. And then in 1999, I was hired by McDonald's and Wendy's to teach their auditors how to do it. And in that year, I saw more change than I'd seen in a 25-year career prior to that.
Marked it. Not really, never really, I only learned about it handful of years ago. Never really knew autism even existed before I was diagnosed, and my connection to it, the way I describe myself, I'm very connected with autism. I often identify as autistic, but autism has never been I'm never really a part of autistic communities. I'm not active in autism awareness. I'm not there's no events or anything.
Today is April 2nd, Autism Awareness Day, and this is a type of day where everyone is supposed to accept, belong, support, and be able to connect in our autistic world and community.
I'm not so sure about marking it, but one way or another, it should be about highlighting the best things about autistic people and understanding what autism is and highlighting the best things about autistic people. It is about awareness and understanding and acceptance and diversity, and allowing us to talk about our strengths and how our skills and how we can benefit the world.
Just like any other day, I'm just going to be making art. In this case, I'm currently making my grad film for my final year project called Temple Grandin. It is an adaptation of a Polish folktale. It's something I'm truly connected with the land, with the food, the culture, everything about it, the arts, the music. There's many reasons why I want to make this film. It's historical, it's cultural, it's a great story, it's fantastical, it's whimsical, it's dramatic, it's epic, it's horrifying, with the dragon and all that. It's like a Godzilla movie waiting to happen. It's a big, ambitious project too, because I'm doing this all in my room, during these times. Hopefully everyone will enjoy it and bring a little sunshine to everybody's day.
Well, what I would say is, understand is that you're not alone. There are people with autism that are completely different, have different interests, have different tastes and different flavors. So on Autism Awareness Day, I would think that be yourself, don't let anyone get to you, and make your life like it's the best.
I'm taking part of this opportunity because I love filming and letting autistic voices be heard.
Next year, if I'm informed a little prior to the occasion, whatever is occurring, any charity events or promotions or large events that require a lot of people to get involved for next year. I would ideally like any events taking place in either Nottingham or Derby or anywhere around the East Midlands to inform people more actually on Facebook, because then of course my friends and I can actually also get involved, whether it be one day in the week or even at a weekend, perhaps running a marathon or baking or crafting or whatever the case may be.
I believe my small social group, we share things from autism sites to help promote Autism Awareness Day. So I know 2 years ago CEX, a media and film store selling company for DVDs and games and whatnot, electronic store, dimmed the lights to help people with autism, because some people with autism have sensory issues, especially ones on the lower end of the spectrum. Medium to lower end are more prevalent with sensory issues.
No matter what people say about you, that you can't do this, the way I put it here is, from what I've seen today's society, is that people with autism can't get a joke.
My dream is to become a motivational speaker one day, and then maybe an autism activist, because I think people around the world, they need to know more about it. And there's a lot of people that may not understand it, but I know there's nothing we can change about that. But really though, it's just all about helping. And you know what? If they don't accept us, well, that's not the right people to be around with, right? So basically, it's all about helping and being able to teach.
I say that let them, let them. I'm autistic, I have seen comedy shows before, and I laughed. So, not people with autism will think the same like me, but what makes you so unique is the fact you can have a very good different outlook on the world and understand it's not pretty much simple in today's society. And so understand that you're not alone. Not everyone will think like you, and that's okay.
Don't judge autism as a disease, because it isn't. It's a condition, and it helps us to figure out how we can learn about our dreams and what we want to do in life, which is exactly why we celebrate Autism Acceptance Day. Remember that.
You will actually achieve so many things, and you will prove people wrong.
Something that inspired me was going to Disney World, where you keep moving forward. That's their motto. I couldn't have been happier. It inspired me to think of possibilities and other things that I could do to help make the world a better place.
This has certainly been an Autism Awareness Day like no other. Of course, at the time of this documentary, we're currently in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so typically I would normally go out and be doing lectures on autism. And also, I would also do concerts. And I did do a bit of a live stream talking about autism earlier on today, but it was definitely on a much smaller scale this year due to the pandemic. One of the things that I do as part of the lectures is I have the participants write a spelling test. And so what I do at first is I ask them to just simply write their name. And then I ask them to switch their hands and write with their opposite hand that they would typically write with. Once they're done that, I then start the spelling test. And typically beforehand, I've chosen volunteers out of the audience to create different distractions. So I've had stuff where I might have the audio team turn up my mic so that my mic and sound is much louder. And I might have another person flick the light switch. I might have a bunch of people just randomly start talking really, really loud and obnoxiously. I might have people stamp their feet and clap their hands. And what this does is it creates this general sense of anxiety in the room to those that are unaware of really what's going on. And in turn, it really creates a really, really cool simulation of what it's like to be overstimulated while also suffering with weak fine and gross motor skills. And I think that really does a really, really good job of really putting into perspective really what it's like to have autism on a daily basis.
There's been some success with kids with loud noises, like, for example, a vacuum cleaner, where the child gets to control it. He turns it on and off, he plays with it, and sometimes you can, reduce it where you make the noise, where you deliberately crunch some potato chips yourself. And then you might get to where you could tolerate it better with somebody else.
So, I'm marking this day like I do every day by just being myself and trying to keep moving forward in my life. April 2nd to me is a day to encourage acceptance, and I really hope that one day the world comes to accept autistics for who we are, not something to cure or to fix, but just for who we are as neurodivergent beings.
I am making sure that I am spending it just relaxing. I am making sure that I am level-headed, not stressing out about anything, and just going on it about as a normal day.
I keep trying to move forward, and I hope the world keeps doing the same so that we have authentic representation in the media. We should all celebrate the differences in people. It's what makes life interesting.
I had a very big thing. I wanted to prove I wasn't stupid. And the project that was shown there, the Dipping Vat project, was shown really accurately in the movie. And that was my I wanted to prove I wasn't stupid project. And when I got that done, I'm looking at it and I'm going, well, I guess I'm not stupid.
Some people get the wrong impression about autism. They look at us as if we're crazy people or we're psychos, but they don't know that. We're just as original as anyone in the world. Like, as someone with Down syndrome or someone who's blind or someone who's deaf. We're just as human being as anyone in the world. And we have many talents. We're all special in our own way. And if they just understood that, they would get to know us more better.
I think of it as a day to celebrate who you are inside. Who you are up here, who you are inside, meaning like from the heart. Like, just be yourself. It's a day to, if you have autism, or if people know about autism, like, for those people, just be yourself. That's all you gotta do on that day. If you want to be like your favorite superhero, or you want to be your favorite villain, but do it in moderation. But if you want to be someone who you want to be, you do it. Be who you want to be. Don't let anyone say you can't. Use that someone you want to be as your inspiration. All in all, I have no problems with autism. I love it because it allows you to think outside the box. You know what I mean? Like, for me, it's more of a special gift to me.
I get asked about, autism awareness. I'd rather be showing, let's show what people can do. I love what Stephen Hawking has to say about disability. And he told the New York Times this quote, "Concentrate on those things. Your disability does not prevent you from doing well." He could do math in his head. That was about it. But he did it really super well.
Being in touch with who I am as a person, with autism, without autism, and just really honoring my personality, not being afraid to show who I am, and just accepting myself.
I'm still doing my career, but I'm in my 70s now, and I want to encourage the young people, that go out and do something and be successful. And having an interesting career for me has made made my life worth living.
Defenestration. That means throwing someone out of a window. I love it because it's so oddly specific and has such very, very, very few circumstances where you can use it. And yet we have a word for that, but we don't have words for, like, I don't know. That's such a, like, there's no word for watering plants other than watering. And that's like a word that can have multiple meanings when defenestration has one meaning, and that means throwing somebody out of a window. I think it's funny for a multitude of reasons, the main of which is, why does it exist?
I have a favorite saying. Be the change. Be the change, as in, if you want things to change, or you want to do something to help change things, be the change. Start it.
My favorite words are unicorns, glitter, and phrases like lit and rad.
Archetype, because archetype is also another psychological term that can be branched, like the one that comes to mind, because there's 9 original psychological archetypes, but it's used in a broader context. Or like I have a hero archetype, and it can be used in different scenarios, synopsis, and if you know the archetype of what you want to use for a medium such as animation, and you want to build it a story arc from drawings that I have based my animation on, then I can build up a narrative for certain aspects of my creatures and make a story, which is a creative process in different terms. So yeah, that's my favorite word.
Unique and eccentric, and that's not me talking, that's every single advisor who's dealt with me on a professional capacity talking. My best mate would describe me as a lovely person with a heart of gold. I think that's good enough for anybody, to be fair, yes.
It depends on the mood, depends on the day. That's like picking my favorite color. Sure, I tend to go with the color purple, but I think every color works great. I think they all have a different purpose, just like every word has a different purpose. You know, if we only had one word in a book, it would be pretty monotonous. I would get bored of that word pretty quickly.
Strength, courage, determination. And again, if I hesitated or struggled or started with any of my sentences during me answering any of these questions, is again my autism. Talking is not really my strongest point.
My favorite word is humanity, which I think we should all strive for.
To me, there's a good amount of favorite words, that I can think of. But if there's one I would like to say, that I think is the most, excellent. Excellent.
Being excellent. So that I become more successful.
Well, one word that I remember being told very early on is perseverance. You're going to have setbacks. The superintendent at the Swift plant, Norb, he says you've got to have perseverance. Never forget sitting in Norb's office, and he was telling me that. You always have to keep persevering.
I think my favorite word would be love. I think love, and also actually I'll throw one more in there, acceptance. I think that's huge. I think definitely being somebody who has autism and seeing other children, other people who have to live with autism on a daily basis, and of course other special needs as a whole, I think it's so important for us to accept ourselves. And it's not necessarily about other people accepting us. Yes, that's also a contributing factor, but I think relying on just us and who we are as a individual, and also as I like to call people with autism and special needs, the autistic tribe. It's like we have a tribe of our own, and when I think of that, it really helps me to visualize again that we're all one, and there's so many people across the world living with this condition called autism or Aspergers, and so many other people don't know what it feels like to have it. And sometimes it's hard, but I think it's really, if there's any message I can share right now on this film, I would just say, whoever you are, whatever you have in your life, just trust in who you are. Trust in who you are as your own person, and honor that, accept it, and believe me, everything else will come from that.
Nobody's perfect. And yes, that is what I mean. Not nobody's perfect, but definitely nobody's perfect, because that is true. And indeed, that is what it means, is nobody is perfect. Nobody's perfect.
All right, people, listen up. In these dark times, we need light and love. Be a friend to this world. Keep rising above. In a soon to be wonderful nation of cooperation, kindness and care. It's an obligation. Let me tell you about it. Dream for the future of me and you. A bright, bold, golden attitude. Loving your friends and family. Learning to create harmony. Harmony. What makes a better world? 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 Come on, people.
Cleaning the oceans, reducing our trash, saving the animals, stop that green gas,
reciting poems,
movies and dance, a beautiful sky,
a sweet romance,
freedom of speech, body and mind.
Express your life and let me show you mine.
Here's to